Welcome to the Living Artist Podcast. I'm your host, Preston M. Smith. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Living Artist Podcast. I'm Preston M. Smith, at PMS Artwork everywhere on internet land and socials. I want to thank you for landing on this podcast. Whether you're a professional artist, just getting started in the art world, a collector of art, or just consider yourself a creative person, this podcast has something for you. I like to think of it as a fun way to rant and talk to other creative people about living the life of an artist, surviving and getting ahead in the art world, and enjoying your life. But most importantly, not waiting until you're dead to make it happen. All right, let's get started. Bow, bow.
Beautiful.
Chica-chicaaah.
Bow, bow. Oh yeah.
Chica-chicaaah.
Bow, bow. More beautiful.
Chica-chicaaah.
Bow, bow. Oh yeah.
Chica-chicaaah. Chica-chicaaah. Oh my God. If there ever was a time for me to get sued, it'll be over this. No. This is an homage for all of you out there who were alive in the 80s. You probably remember that song. Oh my God. Yeah, it's called Oh Yeah. I think they're called Yellow, the band Yellow. Check it out. Yeah, more of a homage than stealing. I just had to get that off my chest. My wife and I were just sitting in bed the other night. We were thinking of what to watch, and K9 came on, and I was like, you know what? I haven't seen this since I was a kid, and I loved that movie when I was a kid. And I actually even had the soundtrack. Don't judge. Don't be judging. Don't be hating. I had the soundtrack for that movie, and I just remember that song being on there. And as a kid, just like playing it over and over again. And now when I listen to it, it's like, what the hell is this? And it's kind of creepy in context. But hey, these were simpler times. And I was like, I don't know, 8 or something. So don't judge. But anyway, now that I got that out of my system, we can move on to the episode, which is all about enjoying the process. And I'm going to explain what I mean by that. And more specifically, a type of enjoying the process. I don't mean the process of like your process of painting, your process of sculpting or taking photos. I don't mean getting into the nitty gritty of how you do it and the details and the technique and all that. That's all fine and good, and we've talked about that. We can talk about it in other podcasts. But this is more about, on a kind of broader philosophical, spiritual level, about enjoying the process. Because last time I know I talked about moving the studio and getting into this big studio and how grateful I was and how amazing the studio is. And it still is, and I'm completely grateful for it, and I'm really enjoying it. I love it. I actually just created my first 3 or 4 pieces in there, and I had to just step back and go, oh man, this is what I've been waiting for all this time. But it got me thinking about the process and how, more than anything, it's about what you do in the studio, not specifically the studio. Now, the studio is great because it gives you the space, and if it has a certain ambiance, it can lend itself to some creativity. But it's also just about you falling in love with the process. And it's also one of those things where, you know, we're all shooting for things in our careers. We're all shooting to be whatever. I'm sure some of you are shooting to be a famous artist, or some of you are shooting to be a professor at a respected university in an MFA program teaching art. I'm sure for some of you, it is just making a living off of your art. Some of you, it's probably getting certain equipment that you have or you've been waiting for a long time. And that's all great. All these goals are completely necessary and almost essential for our growth, because you have to be shooting for things. You have to be striving to accomplish stuff and, you know, setting, like they say in Kicking and Screaming, you shoot for the stars and you hit the roof. But you want to be shooting for the stars and doing these things because it gives you a reason to get out of bed and keep creating in the morning, and, you know, an end goal that you're looking for. Now, what happens when you reach that goal, though? What happens when you reach that end goal or a major goal that you have? That is a tough question, because it's almost like the dog chasing the tail, right? You chasing your tail frantically, or the dog chasing the car. We're going to stay with the dog metaphor. If you're a dog chasing the car or you're a dog chasing your tail, what happens if you actually catch it? You don't know what to do with yourself. It's like, okay, so I got this thing. Let's take the fame example. You've been wanting to be a famous artist your whole life. You've been striving for that. And boom, you get it. You get the fame. You get in the blue chip galleries. You're all over the magazines. You're in amazing collectors' homes. You're living large and in charge. You're living the high life. And what do you do now? You always hear over and over again, it's lonely at the top, right? There's nowhere else to go from there. And I think a lot of people, that's where like the drinking and the drug abuse or, certain unsavory choices come into play, because you're like, wow, I was kind of expecting this to solve all my problems, and it hasn't. So that's what I mean by process in this context. Like, you have to be in love with the process of being an artist, the process of getting out of bed every morning to create, process of getting out of bed every morning to be a working artist and to enjoy what you do, and developing ideas and getting inspired and executing those on a painting or in a photograph or with a sculpture or whatever you do. That's got to be the thing that you're in love with, because all those other things are just, they're goals. I mean, they're like something that you will put a pin in at some point in your career, and then you move on and you still got yourself to deal with. You still have your psyche to deal with. You still have your struggles to deal with. You still have whatever, anxieties if you have anxiety. You still have depression if you have depression. You still have this yearning to be seen and create. That doesn't go away. So one thing that you can really strive to cultivate is this love of the process and this love for doing what you do. And if you have that, then you have a career, because you can keep creating for the rest of your life, no matter what gets thrown at you. If your studio burns down, God forbid, if you get fame, if you get fortune, you strive and you achieve all that, and you're like, what now? Well, what now is I go back to the drawing board. I create, I get inspired. I put this out into the world and inspire other people. Maybe it's that you love what you do and you can then give back, and you can donate work or set up a charity or whatever it is you do. Do something that fulfills you. But the main thing is being in love with what you do. That's it. If you're doing it for all these other reasons, those things will disappoint you. And, you might be thinking, oh, he's just doing this because he got into a studio and now he's unhappy. As a matter of fact, it's the opposite of that. I was having this moment where I was sitting in the studio going, I'm so glad that I did this right. And I did this at my own pace. Like, this happened over time gradually, because had I gotten all this stuff early on, I wouldn't appreciate it. And I would have maybe been taken by, oh, okay, what's next? Oh, what's this next goalpost, that I can get to? What's this next marker that I can reach and achieve? And then it just kind of gets to a point where it's just empty at some point. I've actually been able to be lucky enough in my career to rediscover why I'm doing this multiple times and fall in love with what I do over and over and over again. So when I actually got into this new studio, I had a moment where I was reflecting after creating a couple pieces, and I was rolling around in my studio with all my space, loving it. And I was just thinking, man, I'm really happy that this happened the way that it did, because I can appreciate it. And I'm wondering if any of you have things like this in your life that you're contemplating or struggling with, mile markers that you've reached, goals that you've achieved that you thought were going to be the end all be all, and then step back and said, wow, this isn't everything. I still have to keep going. I got to keep moving forward. I'm sure that's happened to many of you. And these are great lessons for us in the moment to step back and go, okay, I need to get back on track here. I need to get refocused on what really matters. And this is not just with art. This is in life in general. I think a lot of people are striving for certain things like that job, the dream job or the dream house or the dream husband or wife or the dream child or the dream dog. You fill in the blank. I think a lot of people get so set on these things that they go, once I get that, I'm happy. And I think a lot of people realize that if you're not happy first, those things aren't going to bring you any long lasting happiness. I mean, they'll bring you a little dopamine hit, or they'll give you a little jolt of happiness for a short period of time. But in the long term, real happiness comes from within, real contentment comes from within, and from knowing what you want out of life, and, being in love with the process of life, the process of living your life, the process of creating and being an artist. I think that's where the juice is. That's where the money is. That's where the value is. So this was just something I was thinking about and reflecting on in a very positive way, not in a, oh my God, what have I done? I'm still not happy way, but in a, I am happy. And why am I happy? And why is this sinking in so much when it might not have in the past? It's because I think I have become a person who's in love with the process, in love with what I do, and it's just a good feeling. So if this is something that you're struggling with right now, it's maybe time to get centered. It's time to get refocused. It's time to meditate and think on why you got into this in the first place. And if you got into it for the right reasons, maybe you didn't. Maybe you were taken by some sort of illusion in your mind of success and fame and fortune, and maybe you weren't doing it for the right reasons. Maybe it wasn't for art. Maybe it wasn't art for art's sake. Art for art's sake. Maybe it wasn't just that you loved creation. Maybe you were so fixated on an end goal that it's not bringing you joy in the moment. So maybe it's time to give a little reflection on that and start to get in love with the process again, or start to cultivate getting in love with the process for the first time if you haven't. There's so much joy in the little moments, not only in life, but in the studio, man. When I'm in there, I just enjoy getting the paint out onto the palette, or mixing the paints, or getting out the right tool, smelling the oil in the studio. There's all these little moments, the way the light kind of comes in and reflects off of the surfaces or the floor. There's just so many little things that I love, putting on the music that I'm going to listen to when I'm getting ready to paint, clearing my mind, having that moment where you actually stop thinking. These are all amazing things, and things that we are very fortunate to have in our lives as artists. So if you can't find those moments, or hey, maybe you've lost them. Maybe you used to have them and you've lost them. You've gotten too caught up in Instagram or, YouTube creating videos or whatever it is. Maybe it's just time to take a step back and, like a child, get back into the things that matter and that made you want to be an artist in the first place. So just a friendly reminder, this is always a good thing. This is kind of like the circumstantial happiness episode back in the day, but a little more focused on art. I think it's so easy to put goals in your mind and just keep moving the goalpost back and back and back and back and back, and you never really get there. And pretty soon your life is over and you never really enjoyed those moments. You never really enjoyed the process. So now's the time. Here's your wake-up call, because there's so many things nowadays to compete for your attention and to distract you away from the present moment and away from enjoying the process, whether that's social media or submitting to a gallery or, just getting the series done, feeling like you have to just be, getting yourself out there on so many different levels, spreading yourself way too thin that you can't really enjoy what you're doing. That's a sign, if you can't, that you're maybe doing too much, because this is your one life. This is your one time to really experience what you're doing and to really savor it. So let's all get back to that. Let's get back to that joy that brought us into this in the first place. The simple act of creation, of inspiration, creation, and seeing that through to its final form. That's it. That's where it all is. So enough blabbering from me. I think you get the idea here. Get out there and get back into the joy of the process. Are you going to do it? Can you dig it? Oh, wait a minute. I hear an answer coming. Well, that's good enough for me. Chica-chicaaah. This has been the Living Artist Podcast. Thank you so much for listening. I just want you to know that I appreciate you being here, and I'm grateful to be in your ears. Your art and creative life on this planet is meaningful, so thank you for sharing it with me. If you like this podcast, whatever platform you're listening to it on, please subscribe and share it with your friends. You can also leave me a positive review to show your support. This helps me to reach more people with the algorithmic magic and keep the show going strong. If you want to see more of what I do and check out the art that I create, you can visit my website at www.pmsartwork.com or follow me on social media everywhere at PMS Artwork. That's it for now. See you back here next time.